Higher repair costs, labor and supply chain issues, and rising fatalities are among the ongoing challenges affecting the results in the non-standard auto insurance segment. Here to discuss these issues in further detail are two contributing authors to a recent AM Best report on the topic, Associate Director David Blades and Industry Research Analyst Nasheeta Mahbub. David and Nasheeta, welcome. Great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great to see you, Lori.
Yeah, thank you, Lori.
David, it's been a challenging 30-month run in this non-standard auto segment. Can you take us through some of the underwriting results and pinpoint some of the trouble spots?
Well, yes, Lori. I think, over the 30-month period, like you say, you've had inflationary pressures that have really put even more pressure on non-standard auto writers to underwrite profitably in this segment. And we've seen also just rate inadequacy concerns that kind of have plagued that industry or that segment for a long time. Those have been kind of the key contributors. Then, as you mentioned, you have supply chain issues, and you have rising labor costs, especially from the standpoint of the labor market, where it's going, and that's pushing some of the claim costs that are being dealt with by private passenger auto and non-standard auto insurers alike. But what we've seen is that from a combined ratio perspective, when we start looking into the underwriting results for the non-standard auto writers, over the last couple of years, the combined ratio has reached over a 110. And we haven't seen consecutive years where we've seen that high of a combined ratio for this particular segment. And AM Best looks at its specific composite of non-standard auto writers. We haven't seen that kind of performance consecutively since 2000 and 2001. So it's been a long time since all of these types of pressures have really kind of focused on and really hurt the results of the non-standard auto writers. In particular, and when you look at the combined ratio, you look at either on the loss ratio side or on the expense side, it's not the expenses that have really been hurting non-standard auto writers. It's really been the loss ratio. Loss ratio, the last couple of years, as I mentioned, when the combined ratio is going over 110, loss and loss adjustment expense ratio has been over 80. So that means over 80 cents of every dollar of earned premium that's being brought in is being paid out for claims and related claims expenses. And then when you look at it from an operating standpoint, so try and offset the underwriting losses, the investment gains, earned investment income just hasn't been enough to really offset the rising losses that we've seen on the underwriting side. And that's really kind of what this marketplace has been looking at. Through the first half of the year, as I mentioned, the combined ratio being over 110 for the last couple of years, it was 111 through the first half of the year. So again, it's still trending in the same direction, although we may see over the second half some of the embedded changes, the push for higher premiums, and some of the underwriting initiatives that have been undertaken. We may see some movement or some improvement over the second half, but through the first half of the year, we hadn't actually seen that manifest into a meaningful change from a combined ratio perspective.
Nasheeta, how does the non-standard segment's underwriting performance stack up against those of standard insurers?
Yeah, Lori. So the performance of non-standard auto insurance compared to standard insurers have shown consistent performance, and it's very weak. Like David said, if we look at the trend, it's very notable when we look at the combined ratio. And in historical terms, the non-standard insurers haven't matched their performance with their standard counterparts in terms of the underwriting practices and how profitable they were. We did see some progress during the COVID because of reduced road activity, but in the subsequent years, in 2021, we've witnessed a decline for non-standard insurance and standard insurance in 2022. I would say non-standard insurance face higher operational costs due to increased transactions, and this poses a challenge if they want to maintain efficiency. The smaller non-insurance companies, they have higher fixed costs. So the larger ones who are acquired by larger companies are able to manage those difficulties better. Competitive pressure remains very high for non-standard specialists, with major companies like Allstate and State Farm acquiring these entities. And despite the progress that we have seen, like David said, we might see a reversal of this recent trend because of increased competition and the current market challenges of 2023.
David, how would you categorize the non-standard segment's overall premium growth over the past 5 years?
I think over the past 5 years and even beforehand, the premium growth has actually been very consistent. If you look back over the last 10 years or 10 or 11 years, it's been very consistent, but it's the last 2 years that we've really seen a spike in the overall premium, direct premiums written for the overall market segment. And that's really because, again, the recognition of the deterioration in the results and the deteriorating trends. Companies have really been pushing for rate adequacy. They've been really trying to drill down on the issues that they have in their, within their books of business. So we've really actually seen, for the last two full complete calendar years, we've seen the premium go up even further. As we drill down, we look those premium increases, even from a quarter-to-quarter basis, if we compare quarters of each of the last several years, and this is taking 2020 obviously out of the picture, we've seen consistent increases in the premium. So there's no question that the companies are really, from a rate adequacy perspective, trying to address what they know has been a deficiency from an overall book, and the fact that the premiums have not been keeping up with claim costs and just the rising trends from auto severity in particular. It's unfortunate that what we've seen, as I mentioned earlier, from the overall results, combined ratio and the loss ratio, that the premiums that are going up still have not been sufficient enough to kind of offset what we've seen in the rising claim costs. But as we see more momentum in that direction, we may start seeing the beneficial manifestation of some of these, the drive, to increase premiums.
David, what does the report indicate regarding reserve levels for this segment?
So I will say this is a positive for overall. For a market segment that's been struggling from a profitability perspective, when you look at prior year reserves, they've been very modestly deficient, less than 1.5% of earned premium or annual earned premiums, and that's relatively low from the standpoint of adverse development. It's been actually even better in the last couple of years in terms of just very modest or minimal adverse development. And what that's showing, with the results actually deteriorating so much more in the last couple of years, but the fact is that the reserves, or the prior year reserve development, has actually been even or modestly unfavorable. That shows that the real problem that non-standard autos riders have been having has been in the most current or the most recent accident years. And again, a lot of that has to do with inflation. A lot of that has to do, like I said, with some of the other fundamental issues and structural issues that have really been affecting these companies. But so it's a positive that prior year reserve development has been relatively modest, and the fact that hopefully for these insurers, if again, their moves from a premium side to increase their adequacy of their premiums, and if also the moves to really address underwriting issues that they've pinpointed within their books of business, as they start to take hold, you may start to see, again, some improvement in the overall results.
David, Nasheeta, it's been a pleasure. Thank you both so much for joining us.
You're welcome, Lori.
You're welcome, Lori.
That was AM Best Associate Director David Blades and Industry Research Analyst Nasheeta Mahbub. For AM Best TV, I'm Lori Chortis.